Okay, so here's a bridge case from tooth number 3 to 5 that I received from a dentist, and he wanted to do this out of full contour Emax and wanted me to evaluate whether or not the design was proper. So the biogeneric design looks great, contours look great. The big thing when we're doing Emax bridges is we want to be sure with the connectors. The studies have shown us that you want at least 16 millimeters square for the connectors between the abutments and the pontics. So when we look at this, I can tell by the red that the dentist did the anatomic connectors. If you're not familiar with the anatomic connectors, there's videos on the in-lab portion of the site. So let's go ahead and check to see what his connector cross-section is. If we look between 4 and 5, we're at 15.02, so a little bit less than the 16. If we look between 3 and 4, we're at 16.64, a little bit above the 16. So theoretically that looks good. But what I think about when I look at this is when you mill this out, most dentists are going to go in there, do some finishing and polishing, some contouring, maybe go ahead and define these occlusal and buccal and lingual embrasures a little bit for aesthetic purposes. So what we have to be careful of is we're right at that 16 millimeter mark, but we got to be careful in the fact that we're going to do some finishing, some polishing, some contouring, so you're going to decrease this connector size. So this 15 millimeters on this anatomic connector between tooth number 4 and 5 is probably not going to cut it. Okay, so we have to be a little bit careful and cognizant of that. So what I would like to tell you guys is do your best to get close to 20 millimeters on your initial design. Give yourself some room for some contouring. And although I really like anatomic connectors, that's actually my go-to for my final design, and we'll run through that. I want you to start your design with intersecting connectors. So let's go to Administration. We're going to edit this, choose a connector. We're going to switch from intersecting to anatomic. Don't forget to click on the connectors. Excuse me, we're going to keep it on intersecting, click on the connectors, and hit OK. So we just switched from anatomic to intersecting. If we go back to click on design, we're going to notice that we actually did not change the design. The design was able to be kept. So now after we switched into the intersecting connectors, got rid of those anatomic connectors, let's go ahead and check our connector size now. So now we are somewhere in the neighborhood of 6.58 between tooth number 4 and 5, which is clearly inadequate, and we're at 8.32, which is also inadequate between 3 and 4. So what I'm going to do here is, and what I like to do whenever I start a design, is I always start the design in intersecting connectors. I want to make sure that I get the intersecting connectors correct, and then we'll switch to anatomic connectors and we'll have a big, nice, bulky connector. So the easiest way to do this is let's go to circular shape, make sure we're on 2-directional, and let's go ahead and take care of some of these occlusal embrasures. Okay, we'll switch over, we'll work on some of these gingival embrasures. Go to the buccal. Okay, and lastly what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to anatomical. Again, make sure we're on 2-direction. We'll go to the ponic and we'll just start moving these over a little bit, the entire contact, to get a strong intersecting connector. Okay. We obviously may want to tweak the occlusion a little bit, but we can do that later. Okay, so now that we've actually redesigned some of these intersecting areas, let's go ahead and recheck our connector width. Between 3 and 4 we're at 20.7, which is great. We're at 9.47 between tooth number 4 and 5, which is not great. So, but if you look at the design between 4 and 5, sometimes you run into these scenarios where we really don't have a lot more room just because of the height of the restorations to make that intersecting connector much stronger. Okay, so we basically did the best we could in the intersecting mode. So now let's go back to administration. We're going to edit the restoration again, choose connector. We're going to switch back to anatomic, click on the connectors, hit OK. We'll go back to design. Now notice here we still have the intersecting connectors. In order to switch it back to anatomic, we have to click calculate restoration, and now we've got the big fat anatomic connectors. Now if you keep the connectors like this, you're going to have a lot of work with finishing. So let's go ahead and check the connector sizes. We're obviously between tooth number 3 and 4. 44.28 millimeters, that's a pretty strong connector. I'm pretty sure that won't break. Between 4 and 5, we're at 37.70. So these are very adequate connectors, but they're too big in terms of having to finish and polish these and contour. So what we're going to do, we're activated the connector between tooth number 4 and 5. We'll right click. We're going to choose the scale function. Now with the scale function, I can just simply grab it and drag it in and reduce this to a connector that looks pretty. It follows a contour, and we're at 23.18, well above the 20 millimeters that I told you to be at. We'll double click on the connector between 3 and 4 with the scale function still accurate, and just drag the connector smaller so we get a nice contour to this. We're still at 26, 24. Okay, so now what we did is we went ahead, we have anatomic connectors. We designed the intersecting first. We're over 20 millimeters. We allowed ourselves some room to finish and contour. Obviously we need to fix some of those areas between. Let's go ahead to the mill. And here is our mill preview of this 3-unit bridge. We're over 24 millimeters on our connectors, so it gives us some room to adjust areas like this, okay, and not affect the overall strength of the connector. Because we only need 16 millimeters to be accurate. So this is more of a bit of an advanced design for the connectors. Remember, what I like to do is start at intersecting, get the intersecting as close as I can to 16 to 20 millimeters. Usually you can, depending on the height. In this case, we're going to have a little bit of trouble just based on the actual height of the teeth. Once you get it as good as you can with intersecting, go ahead and edit it back to anatomic. And then once in anatomic, you'll have really fat connectors. Right click to your tools, your connector tools, use your scale tool and adjust the connector size. Try to be somewhere in the 20 millimeter range or above, and then that will give you room to do your finishing and contouring of the connectors to make it look aesthetic and be over our threshold of 16 millimeters that the research tells us that we need to be successful with 3-unit Emax bridges.